everyone. Good evening, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Nadia.
And I'm Azaleah.
And together we'll be presenting to you a presentation entitled Capturing Authentic Opinions Knowingly and Unknowingly. So this was specifically a case study where we used in-the-moment technology to capture responses to assess the delivery of less well-known speakers. So just a bit of information about the organization before we get into the sharing for today. So we're from Rysense. We're a market research agency that focuses on public and social issues. A lot of the work that we do looks at public sentiment, sensing, and communications. Data quality is very important to us, so we strive to produce high quality insights that would be most impactful for our clients. So let's talk a bit about the brief that we had with this piece. So specifically in this case, we wanted to study the elements of a speaker's delivery and how it impacts the impression created about them on the audience. So if you look at the slide, the next slide, these are all speakers who we are quite familiar with. You might even be able to hear them in your head. But no, we didn't test these speakers. But the point that I'm trying to bring up here is that when you have very distinct styles or individuals with very strong personalities, it might be easier to understand how they fare in terms of their delivery and presentation. But what happens when you have speakers who are less well known? So like the slide that we see here. So these are speakers that have appeared on TED Talks, and not to discredit who they are, they're less popular or less known, but you may not know of them. And so therefore, what are some of the things that they can do to improve their delivery so that it resonates better, or so that you engage better as an audience? So that was exactly what we were trying to find out in our study, because we were specifically looking at speakers who were quite similar to one another, but are not very distinct, or are not celebrities, or may not be as popular, or are sort of less well known. So the challenge that we had with it was basically that when you assess some of these speakers, they might be quite similar to one another, and they may not have very distinctive delivery styles. But we did want to find out or test out the nuances and impressions created based on each speaker's delivery. So what we were noticing when we just ran discussion groups, or when we looked at it purely from a qualitative perspective, is that you might be getting a lot of the same descriptors, or you might even get contradictory feedback. So for example, in the verbatims that you see here and the quotes that you see here, most of the time respondents will say, this speaker was confident, that speaker was confident, the other speaker was confident, but they're all doing different things, or they may be doing the same things, but you don't get a sense of, so who was coming out more confident, or who did better in terms of the presentation, what was the person doing? So we found that not only are they using similar descriptors, we also realized that there was some contradictory feedback that we received. So for example, one person may find the use of notes as knowing their stuff or being confident, but in another case, not using the notes was then seen as, or the person knows their stuff, doesn't even require notes, and is still seen as confident. So how do we make sense of some of this feedback? So it was the challenge that we had with just running it in the form of traditional focus groups is that a lot of the time respondents can't really remember what they saw. So in this case study, we looked at respondents watching videos of the presenters or the speakers, and they may not have remembered correctly what was it that triggered the response that they liked or didn't like. So inaccurate memory in certain times. Also sometimes fatigue sets in. So if you keep watching the different videos of speakers, after a while it kind of like switch off. They don't really pay attention, or they might just be telling you what they think should be the answers based on what they're seeing. The third thing is that the challenge is with just watching is it can be fairly passive. They're just sitting back, and after a while, again, you may switch off, or they only remember the last things that they saw in the form of a recency effect. And you may not be able to capture a lot of the subconscious reactions that they aren't able to articulate. And last but not least, like how I showed you in the verbatims earlier, how do you iron out the contradictions or things that are coming across a certain way? So the triangulation of data was another thing that we were having trouble with if you just ran traditional focus groups. So how do we then end up looking at moment-to-moment technology? So we wanted to address these challenges specifically. Are there other ways to collect data during focus groups so that these challenges are mitigated? And are there other types of data that we can collect during focus groups that will value add to the analysis phase? So that's when we decided to look at, in-the-moment tools that could address some of these issues. So I'm going to hand over to Leah now. She's going to take us through how we did this and the solutions that address some of these questions.
Thank you, Nadia. So before we get into how the in-the-moment tools helped us to address these challenges, let me just share with you how the process of how we did this. So the in-the-moment tools, it helps us to capture respondent scores per second while they are watching the video clips individually and anonymously. However, we found that we can't just use the in-the-moment tool data on its own. It needs to be paired with the qualitative feedback, and the setup itself is pretty easy to manage. So how does this work exactly? So while respondents are watching clips of the speakers delivering their content, we capture their responses moment to moment based on how they feel throughout the video. This not only makes them pay attention while they're watching the video, it also makes it more of an active engagement, not just passive. And it helps us to see, which are the points where they feel more strongly or they don't feel kind of anything at all. And how we know this is because they are asked to give their scores. So before we start watching the video clips, the respondents are given an indicator. So the indicator runs from 0 to 100, and they start at 50, which is neutral. Then they are told to slide it down towards 0 to indicate that they don't really like something so much, and slide it up to 100 to show that actually they do like this point a lot. And so while the session is ongoing, we are able to take note of the points that, did well, did not do so well, were maybe kind of just blah for the respondents in the moment. And we're able to see this, we're able to see an aggregated line chart to get an overall sense of where the group is feeling throughout watching the video. So, how does this help us with achieving the questions that we had earlier and enhancing the feedback on the speakers? So the first point is that respondents are giving their responses to a series of skill questions after they watch the video, and these are answered anonymously. In the case for this study, we asked them to give scores on various attributes of the different speakers that were shown, and then we could get an aggregated mean score with from the skill questions that were asked. So we could kind of compare the speakers at a glance, one shot, and it also helped us to enhance our probes and focus more on focus on particular areas of interest during the discussion after, so that we can really understand why is it that this point was more highly scored or more highly rated, and why was it this point was just not well received by the speakers, by the respondents, I mean. Yeah. So specifically, what the tools helped us to do was to craft more specific probes based on the points that we identified during the live testing, so that we can better understand the respondents' reactions. So you can see on the screen that without the in-the-moment tools, these are some of the feedback that we get. So you get things like respondents saying, I'm not sure, I don't know which part. So if we were relying solely on this, we might not be able to get much at all. But using the in-the-moment tools, we can identify some specific points where the audience interested, not interested, and we can get a much richer discussion out of this. So this is an example of a line chart that shows an aggregated response that was recorded while the respondents were showing the video. Well, watching the video, I'm sorry. So you can see here there are some peaks, some dips, and around these peaks and dips. So the peak happened maybe when respondents were making eye contact with the audience, using gestures to emote their delivery, and a dip happened when they were looking down and referring to notes. So from the line chart already, we can tell that, you know, at this point, the respondents don't like that the speaker is doing this so much. And at another point that we know, okay, this is something that maybe speakers might need, or this particular speaker might need to do more for the audience to feel more engaged with the speaker. Then another thing that it helped us was, in the absence of qualitative feedback, we're still able to gather some immediate reactions to the material. So what I mean by this is that sometimes in a focus group, we are reliant on respondents to articulate their responses. So you might get respondents who say, you know, they don't really know how to phrase, they don't really know how to say what they want to say. Or you might even get respondents who don't even want to share certain opinions with the group at all. So without the tools, what this means is that we might lose out entirely on a respondent's reactions, on the points that they might want to, that would add to our discussion, because they just don't want to share, or they don't know how to share. However, with the in the moment tools, we can at least, you know, see whether they like it or they don't like it. So if respondents are less forthcoming or they're not able to articulate their respondents, at least we still have some kind of data, and it's not just kind of drawing a blank for us. Yeah. It also afforded us a way of encouraging active engagement with video stimuli, as you said previously. So, I mean, you're watching a video, sometimes you might just nod off. I mean, there's a lot that's going on. So to keep them engaged, I mean, having them actively and independently critique the clips while they're watching, it does help to keep them a little bit more focused on the video. We get them to, and another thing is that it also means that because they're giving their responses anonymously, individually, they are not going to be, or they're less likely to be swayed by a group opinion. So, you know, you can safely give an opinion that maybe not everyone agrees with. Yeah. And it also allowed participants to record subconscious responses non-verbally. So we are able to kind of nuance between respondents' verbal responses. So we get an instant mean score. We have another set of data to kind of enhance what we're hearing in the group. So as you've seen in a previous example, you know, they may use similar words, similar phrases to describe the different speakers, but they might not mean exactly the same things. So you can see here in this example, so these three verbatims from the groups are of each of the three different speakers whom we tested. So you can see that they've all described these speakers as being confident. But if you look at the mean scores of the attributes for the speakers that were captured after we showed the videos, you can see that actually, while they might say they are confident, the mean scores are not quite reflecting that, you know, they're all exactly, the confidence is not exactly the same across the board. So using the in the moment tools, it does help to add some depth, some texture to the respondents' responses, and improve the quality of our insights when we are analyzing the data after the groups. And I'll take it back to Nadia.
All right, thank you so much, Leah, for taking us through the solutions, or basically the impact of using in-the-moment tools in what we were trying to achieve with this piece. So let me just sum up, you know, some of our learnings. So some of the key things that we took away from this piece. Hopefully everyone's still around and awake. We don't have in-the-moment tools to engage you right now, but I'm hoping it has been a somewhat useful sharing. I guess one of the key things is that technology can be daunting for some, but in this particular instance, I think we found it very useful in terms of supplementing the qualitative data that we had and really identifying and nuancing the information or the data sets that we had based on just the discussions or responses from participants. But on top of that, adding a value and identifying key points of the materials that we were testing to get a better understanding of how the audience was reacting to the videos of the speakers. And specifically, so if you remember the question that we were trying to understand at the beginning, we were trying to identify the nuances of the attributes that differentiated speakers who may be quite similar to one another and are less well known. So that we can tell them, look, you need to do this or you need to do that based on, how you're presenting to improve your engagement or to resonate better with the audience that you are presenting to. So the use of in-the-moment tools really helped us supplement the qualitative feedback that we had. It helped us identify, subconscious decision triggers, things that they didn't even know that, they were doing or they were reacting to based on what they saw. And this helps circumvent, some of the things that we mentioned in terms of the challenges, like the memory recall, after watching something for half an hour, you might not remember what exactly it was that made you feel a certain way, but having the scores being captured or having the points being captured, we were able to identify specifically what it is that made them, give higher scores, or what is it that made them give lower scores, and then probe on it when we had the discussion with them after the sort of session where they input their scores. Basically, having a tool or in-the-moment tool also allowed for more less passive engagement. So they're actively engaged because, and I think the process itself allowed them to be involved or mindful of how they're responding to a piece of material, as opposed to just kind of, spacing out or not being fully engaged with the material. Another thing is that it helped us identify the deep dive. So, which points or what specifically we wanted to understand better based on the responses captured. It provides new insights, new learnings that we may have not have found out from just having a discussion or a qualitative setup with the respondents. And last but not least, it really helped us to triangulate findings where there were contradictions or the use of similar descriptors that didn't really nuance or give us the details of what we were trying to look for in this piece. So we've come to the end of the session of the presentation. So I believe we're going to have a question and answer. You might see us in different clothes or similar. We look forward to chatting with you. If you have questions or anything that you want to run by us, we'll be on standby. Okay, so thank you. See you.
Thank you.